The stars were silent, cold, endless. For thousands of years, the galaxy had drifted in uneasy peace, and dozens of alien species rose and fell. Empires came and vanished. But the one rule that held firm was simple: stay away from Earth. The humans were different, dangerous, too wild, too unpredictable. Some called them monsters. Others called them saviors. But for the last 100 years, Earth had been quiet, its war fleets docked. Its people focused on rebuilding after the brutal solar wars. The rest of the galaxy watched carefully, but kept their distance, until the signal came. It started as a whisper, soft pulse of data traveling across the black, bouncing from one communication relay to another. At first, no one paid attention. Signals came and went all the time, trading beacons, lost ships, forgotten probes. But this signal was different. It didn't stop, repeated over and over, the same simple, desperate words in 1,000 languages. Help us, please. Anyone, help. They are here. Everything is burning, then static. Then the message would start again. It wasn't from one planet. It was from dozens. Worlds on the edge of known space. Planets no one had even heard of. The voice changed each time, sometimes human-like, sometimes alien, sometimes mechanical, but the terror in the voices was always the same. At first, the Galactic Council tried to ignore it. They argued, they delayed. The peaceful races of the stars didn't believe in war anymore. They believed in treaties, in words, in hope. But the signals kept coming. Each day, new planets went dark. Trade ships vanished without a trace. Refugees flooded the edges of safe space with stories of something terrible, vast metal ships that blotted out the sun. Creatures without faces or voices, harvesters that stripped entire planets clean of life. The stars were dying. And so, in the end, the Council did the one thing they swore never to do. They called Earth. The message reached Earth's moon first, bouncing through the old defense satellites that had not been used in decades. Then it reached the Fleet Command Center deep under the ice of Europa. The humans didn't argue. They didn't hesitate. The moment they heard the signal, the generals and admirals gathered. The decision took less than an hour. Earth was not peaceful. Earth was not soft. Earth had spent centuries at war with itself, with nature, with other worlds. It had built weapons no other race dared to imagine. It had trained soldiers born for one thing: survival through fire and fury. The humans understood fear. More importantly, they understood power. The order was given. The fleet would launch in the silent dark of space. The warships woke. The shipyards over Mars glowed bright with engines. Massive carriers, sleek destroyers, deadly gunships, hundreds of vessels, each armed with weapons powerful enough to crack planets. At the heart of the fleet was the ISS Wrath, the largest battleship ever built by human hands. And on its command deck stood Commander Dax Mercer, a man whose name was whispered across Earth and feared on half a dozen worlds. His face was cold, sharp as a blade, his eyes the color of ice. He had seen more death than most men could imagine, and still he stood tall, untouched by time, untouched by mercy. The crew moved around him with quiet precision. No one spoke unless spoken to. They all knew the stories: Mercer, the Butcher of Titan, the man who had led the final assault that ended the solar wars by leveling 3 cities in a single night. Some saw him as a hero. Others saw him as a monster. Mercer didn't care. Yes. Orders were clear. "Set course for Sigma 9, he said softly, his voice calm, almost gentle. "All ships, all divisions, we answer the call." The fleet surged forward. Engines roared as the ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind, heading straight into the unknown. Days passed. Space stretched long and cold. The signals grew louder. Each time they entered a new system, they found only ruins, burned worlds, shattered moons, orbiting debris fields. The destruction was like nothing they had seen before. No survivors, no enemy. Only the dead. The first real contact came on the 5th day. The fleet exited hyperspace over the planet, Helio 7. It had once been a thriving colony, home to over 2 million beings from 7 different races. Now it was silent. The surface was black, scorched beyond recognition. No lights, no life, no air. The fleet sent down drones. The images they brought back chilled even the hardest soldiers. Buildings reduced to melted ash. Bones fused to stone, oceans boiled away. And in the center of the destruction, a single symbol burned into the ground. A circle of iron teeth surrounding a black void, the symbol of the harvesters. Mercer's jaw tightened. "Battle formation. Weapons hot," he ordered. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The crew moved with machine-like speed, faces tight with fear. Then the enemy appeared. First one, then two, then dozens. Vast ships of impossible design, dark metal like twisted bone, shapes that hurt the eyes to look at. The harvester fleet dropped into orbit without warning. No demands, no words, no mercy. They opened fire, the first human. Cruiser exploded instantly. A beam of pure white light sliced through its core, splitting the ship in two. Men and women died in seconds. The enemy ships moved like predators, fast, cold, perfect. But the humans did not run. Mercer stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the enemy. "Fire all weapons," he said softly, and Earth's fleet roared. Missiles, plasma beams, railguns, every weapon Earth had built in centuries of war unleashed at once. The sky burned. Explosions tore through the void. Some harvester ships fell, ripped apart by sheer human fury. But more kept coming. The battle became chaos. Ships collided. Weapons screamed. Soldiers died, but the humans held the line. In the heat of battle, as the stars burned around them, one message kept playing in the comes-on, every channel, in every ear. "Help us, please. They are here. Everything is burning." The signal had reached the right species, and Earth answered it with fire. The human fleet drifted into the ruins of space, the engines burning cold blue against the blackness. Wreckage floated everywhere, broken ships, torn metal, lifeless husks of once great vessels, now reduced to twisted debris. The battlefield stretched for hundreds of miles, a graveyard of countless species that had tried and failed to stop the harvesters. The silence was suffocating. There were no signals, no distress calls, no movement. Only death. Commander Dax Mercer stood at the center of the ISS Wrath's command bridge, his sharp eyes scanning the screens. Every officer moved in tense, quiet motions. No one spoke unless necessary. Every man and woman aboard knew what they were seeing: extinction. Entire civilizations wiped out, worlds erased. The harvesters were not an invading army. They were something worse, something ancient and unstoppable. Something that didn't need to speak because it didn't care. The fleet's ships adjusted formation, taking up defensive positions as they moved deeper into the ghost system. Long-range sensors stretched into the void, searching for any sign of life, but there was nothing. The largest planet below them was barely a shadow, its surface reduced to glassy black rock. Its oceans had been boiled into steam. Entire continents burned away. And above it, drifting like hungry vultures, were the first of the enemy ships, silent, waiting. Mercer's voice was low but steady. "Launch probes. I want eyes on every inch of this system. Prepare ground teams. If there's even one survivor, we find them." The orders were clear. Humanity never ignored a cry for help, no matter how hopeless the odds. It was in their blood to fight, to resist, to claw survival from the jaws of death. The alien races of the galaxy had once called them brutal savages. Now they called them the last hope. The first dropships launched, cutting down through the thin upper atmosphere. Inside, squads of Earth's finest soldiers sat in grim silence, weapons loaded, faces set. They had trained for this all their lives, but none of them had seen anything like what awaited below. The dropships touched down in the middle of what had once been a city. The buildings, if they could still be called that, were blackened skeletons. Towers melted and bent sideways. Roads twisted like torn flesh. The air was thick with ash. Not even insects remained. The only sound was the wind, soft and cold, blowing through the broken bones of the dead world. The soldiers moved carefully, their armored boots crunching over glassy ground. Every shadow looked alive. Every corner felt like a trap. Then they saw it, a single figure, half buried in rubble, barely breathing. A creature with pale, shining skin and large, dark eyes. An alien, but not one the humans recognized. Her body was thin, broken, but her hand still gripped a small beacon device, its weak signal pulsing faintly. Medic teams rushed forward. They scanned her quickly. Life signs were faint. She was dying. Eyes fluttered open. When she saw the soldiers, tears filled her dark eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice was barely a whisper. Too late. You shouldn't have come. Her words sent a shiver through the soldiers. The medics loaded her onto a stretcher, but before they could lift off, something else happened. The comms cracked to life. All teams contact. We have movement, multiple signals. The ground shook from the shadows of the ruined city. Dark shapes emerged, tall, twisted, unnatural, the first harvester ground. Units revealed themselves. They didn't look like any known machines. Their bodies were black as obsidian, long limbs ending in claws like razors. Their heads were featureless, no eyes, no mouths, just smooth surfaces that reflected no light. And when they moved, it was like watching shadows come alive. The soldiers opened fire, laser bursts, explosive rounds, grenades all unleashed at once, but the creatures were fast and naturally fast. They darted between wreckage, climbing walls, leaping impossible distances. One soldier screamed as he was pulled into the darkness. Another vanished under a black tide. Fall back to the dropships. The team leader shouted, panic cracking through his voice. The sky above began to glow. The main harvester ships were moving, dropping more of the creatures onto the surface. The battle was already lost. The humans didn't hesitate. They grabbed the wounded alien and sprinted for the ships. The engines roared as the dropships lifted off, just as the enemy closed in. From orbit, the Wrath unleashed, covering fire. Plasma beams lit up the atmosphere, burning through hundreds of the black creatures. The entire planet shook under the assault. But for every enemy killed, more appeared. On board the dropship, the alien woman lay still,
Her eyes locked onto the
human commander through the screen. They won't stop, she whispered, her voice barely audible through the comms. They never stop. My world, my people. We fought, we begged, and still, they came. Her words hung heavy in the air as the dropship docked with the Wrath. The soldiers stumbled out bloody, shaken, alive. Barely in the command center, Mercer watched the battle below, his jaw clenched tight. How many ships? They asked quietly. The answer came back sharp. Hundreds, maybe more. Too many. The fleet was already surrounded. Mercer's eyes stayed locked on the screen. He could feel the weight of every life in the fleet. He could feel the darkness gathering. Get me options, he said, his voice like steel. I'm not dying here. Somewhere in the void beyond the burning planet. The harvesters watched, waiting. The first battle had begun, and humanity true to its nature refused to fall without fire. The broken world, the human fleet, floated in the darkness above the dying planet, its ships surrounded by the cold wreckage of war. Below them, the surface of the world still burned. Columns of black smoke twisted into the sky. Fires raged across empty cities, and in the distance, monstrous harvester war machines moved through the ruins like metal ghosts. The first clash was over, but the true war had barely begun. Inside the command deck of the ISS Wrath, Commander Dax Mercer stood silent. His sharp eyes scanned the glowing screens, each one showing destruction beyond words. He had seen war before, had watched worlds die, but this felt different. This wasn't conquest. This wasn't greed. This was extermination. Pure, cold, unstoppable. Status, he said quietly, his voice calm. .LT, Mara Vance, her face pale, reported with trembling hands. We've lost 2 destroyers, 27 fighter craft. Ground teams are returning. Minimal survivors. Mercer gave the slightest nod. His jaw tightened, but he showed no fear. The crew needed him to be the anchor in the storm, even now. As the enemy gathered in numbers too large to count, he stayed cold, sharp, focused. The alien woman, the one they had pulled from the burning ruins, lay on a medical bed nearby. Machines kept her alive. Body was thin, almost weightless, her skin pale with strange silver veins glowing beneath the surface. But her eyes, those dark, ancient eyes, stayed open, locked on Mercer as if she could already see the end. "They will come again," she whispered, her voice weak but clear. "They always come again." Mercer stepped closer. "Who are they? What do they want?" She closed her eyes for a long moment, then spoke without looking at him. "They are the Harvesters. That is the only name we ever knew. They do not speak, they do not want. They take, they erase." The words sent a chill through the room. Soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Even the hardened veterans of Earth's wars could feel it. This was something different. Something beyond any battle they had fought. "Why?" Mercer pressed. "Why now?" Her voice trembled. "Because the galaxy has grown soft. You are the first species in centuries to still know how to fight. The others begged for peace, begged for mercy, and the Harvesters burned them all." Crew exchanged glances. Unspoken truth was clear. Earth had always been feared for its violence, its cold survival instinct. That ancient darkness might be the only thing that could save the stars. The fleet moved into tighter formation. The enemy ships, hundreds of them, closed in slowly, like predators circling prey. Scanners screamed with warnings. Tactical maps glowed blood red. The second wave was coming. Mercer didn't blink. "Arm all weapons," he ordered. "Ready. Every gun, every missile. We hold." The human warships powered up. Plasma cannons hummed. Railguns locked on. The fleet's engines burned brighter as the humans prepared to meet the impossible head-on, but the Harvesters struck faster than expected. Without warning, the enemy fleet launched massive black spheres, strange weapons that twisted through space in unnatural patterns. When the first sphere struck the human cruiser Resolute, the ship didn't just explode, it folded, crushed like paper. 1 second it was there. The next, nothing. Gasps echoed across the Wrath's bridge. Mercer's hands clenched tight. Fire. He growled. The void lit up. Earth's fleet unleashed everything. Waves of missiles streaked through the dark. Plasma beams cut across space. Hundreds of human weapons struck the Harvester ships, but something was wrong. The enemy absorbed the attacks, twisted around them, adapted in real time. Only a handful of Harvester ships actually fell. The rest kept coming. The battle became chaos. Human ships scattered, dodging energy beams that sliced through steel as if it were water. Soldiers screamed across coms. Fighters exploded. Fragments of ships drifted lifeless through space. Still, the humans refused to run. Mercer's voice cut through the noise, steady as a rock. "We hold. We fight." One by one, the Harvester ships began targeting the Wrath, the largest human ship, the heart of the fleet. Black energy gathered around the enemy vessels as they prepared to strike. Suddenly, the alien woman on the medical bed gasped, her hands glowing with unnatural light. The machines around her screamed alarms. She sat upright, her eyes burning. "Bright, you must not let them take the core," she said, her voice filled with panic. "They don't just destroy bodies, they destroy memory. They eat everything: history, thought, even time." Her words hit Mercer like a hammer. "They're not just machines," she said. "They are endings." But there was no time left. The first beam struck the Wrath's shields, tearing through the outer armor. Sparks flew, the crew stumbled, another blast rocked the ship sideways. Systems failed. Lights flickered. Mercer stood tall, unshaken. "Get me a solution," he barked. .lt. Vance's fingers flew across her console. "Sir, we have one. One option. There's an ancient structure on the planet buried under the ruins. Our scans show unusual energy readings, possibly a weapon or a shield system." Mercer's eyes narrowed. "Ground team?" She hesitated. It's suicide, sir. We'll never get them back. Mercer didn't hesitate. We're already dead if we stay here. Within minutes, a small dropship launched from the Wrath, diving through burning skies toward the shattered planet. Inside were a handful of the best soldiers Earth had left silent. Grim, prepared to die. The alien woman, too weak to walk, insisted on going with them. Her knowledge might be the only key to understanding the ancient weapon buried beneath the ruins. As the dropship descended, the skies filled with fire. Harvester drones swarmed above, their bodies twisting unnaturally, their eyes burning with cold alien light. The soldiers opened fire, clearing a path as the pilot pushed the engines to the limit. The ground loomed closer. The ancient city so old its name had been forgotten, spread out in black ruins below. The real fight was about to begin. The dropship hit the surface hard. The soldiers stormed out, weapons ready, as shadows closed in on all sides. Above them in orbit, the Wrath burned under constant attack. The survival of the galaxy now rested on one fragile thread, and time was running out. The hidden truths, the broken city, stretched around them like a graveyard of giants. Towers that once reached for the sky now lay in twisted heaps of metal and stone. The air was thick with smoke, ash, and something worse, something that felt alive, watching from every shadow. The human soldiers moved carefully, their boots crunching over cracked streets, their weapons raised at every corner. Above them, the sky burned. The flashes of distant battle lit the clouds in brief bursts of white and red. The war in orbit still raging as Earth's fleet fought desperately to hold the line. Commander Dax Mercer's voice crackled over the comms, cold and sharp. Status. The ground team leader, Captain Hale, answered between gasps of breath. We've made planetfall. Moving toward the coordinates. Heavy enemy presence. Minimal resistance so far, but they're out there. We can feel them. Beside him, two soldiers helped the alien woman Lyra walk through the ruins. Her body was weak, barely able to stand on her own, but her eyes burned with a strange fire. Every step they took deeper into the dead city seemed to awaken something in her, as if the place remembered her, and she remembered it. The structure is beneath us, she whispered. Old. Ancient beyond memory. We must reach the core. Soldiers didn't ask questions. Orders were clear. Find the weapon. Save the fleet. Save Earth. The team pressed forward through the shattered streets, deeper into the heart of the ruins. Above them, sky roared as another harvester beam sliced. Through one of the human battleships, a massive explosion lit the dark, and for a heartbeat, the night became as bright as day. Even from the surface, the team could see the distant fireball as another of Earth's ships vanished into ash. They're tearing us apart. One soldier muttered, fear creeping into his voice. Captain Hale snapped back. Focus, move. The team reached what remained of a great temple, or perhaps a control center, none of them could tell. The walls were covered in strange carvings, alien symbols glowing faintly in the dark. The entrance yawned before them, wide and black, leading underground. It felt like a mouth, a doorway into the unknown. Without hesitation, they entered. The air inside was cold, stale. The only sound was the crunch of their boots and the quiet hum of their equipment. The deeper they went, the stranger everything became. Walls shifted slightly when no one was looking. Lights flickered without power. Time itself felt wrong. It's alive, Lyra whispered, her voice distant. This place. It remembers. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances but pressed forward at last. They reached the core. It was a vast underground chamber, circular, with walls of black metal and veins of golden light pulsing like a heartbeat. In the center stood a tall pedestal, and atop it something strange, a glowing sphere of shifting energy, golden and silver at once. Pulsing softly as if breathing, Lyra's eyes filled with tears. The heart of suns, she whispered. The last weapon of my people? Captain Hale moved closer. What is it? Can it stop the harvesters? Lyra nodded slowly, painfully. It is not a weapon in the way you understand. It is life. It burns with the memory of 1,000 dead worlds. If we activate it, the energy will sweep through this system and every harvester will be undone. But she hesitated, her voice dropped. It requires a mind, a living mind, to ignite it. The soldiers fell silent. Meaning was clear. Someone would have to die. Captain Hale swallowed hard, his hands clenched. He turned toward his team. We're not leaving without lighting this thing. Before anyone could speak, Lyra stepped forward. I will do it, she said softly. It was my world they destroyed first. My people, let me finish this. But as she reached for the sphere, the ground trembled. Dust rained from above. A deep, inhuman howl echoed through the tunnels. They're here. One soldier breathed. The walls shuddered as the first. Harvester drones burst into the chamber, shadowy creatures with twisted limbs and glowing red eyes. They came without hesitation, without fear. The humans opened fire. The air filled with gunfire and screams. Plasma bolts lit the dark. The alien creatures charged with terrifying speed, their limbs slicing through stone and armor alike. Out. One soldier went down, then another. Hold the line, Halt shouted, his voice raw. Lyra's hands shook as she stepped toward the core. She pressed her fingers into the glowing sphere.
Ow.
Her breath caught in her throat. The energy surged into her body lightning. Without heat, sound, without noise, memories of her lost world flashed through her mind. Cities, skies, oceans, all gone. Her voice broke into a whisper. I'm sorry. One harvester broke through the line, leaping for her, claws raised. Captain Hale hurled himself forward. Tackling the creature midair, both crashed to the ground. The soldier screamed as the creature tore into him, but he held it. Lyra the seconds she needed. Her voice rose into a cry. The core blazed with light. The golden energy exploded. Outward in a silent wave, the soldiers flinched as the light passed through them, but the harvesters screamed. Their bodies twisted, cracked, and then dissolved into ash. One by one they fell. One by one they vanished. The light reached the surface. The sky above lit. Gold. In orbit, every harvester ship shuddered, crumbled, and disintegrated. The machines died without sound, without fire, rest by something far older than war, and then it was over. Silence. Lyra collapsed, her body still. The core-dimmed Captain Hale crawled across the floor, bloody, barely alive. His breath came in, ragged gasps. His voice broke as he whispered into the comms. Commander Mercer. It's done. They're gone. The line crackled. Mercer's voice, steady, cold, answered. Copy. We're bringing you home. The soldiers gathered what was left of their team. The survivors lifted Lyra's unconscious form, carrying her. Carefully, the war outside had ended, but none of them spoke. None of them cheered. They had survived. But something deeper, darker, still lingered in the air. They could all feel it. The truth wasn't over. It had only begun. The turning point, the stars above the broken planet still glowed, but the fire of battle was gone. Silence returned to the void, heavy and unnatural, as Earth's battered fleet drifted through the emptiness. The enemy, the harvesters, had vanished. Destroyed by the ancient power unleashed from the planet's heart, the survivors on the surface were rescued one by one, their dropships rising slowly through the smoke-filled skies. There were no cheers, no celebration. Only quiet on board the ISS Wrath. Commander Dax Mercer stood in the shadows of the observation deck, his eyes fixed on the planet far below. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, cold, sharp, tired. The war, for now, was over. But, deep in his bones, he felt something that refused to fade. A quiet dread. A warning bee. Behind him, the lift doors slid open. Lieutenant Mara Vance stepped forward, her face pale, her uniform torn from the last wave of battle. She carried a small holopad in her hands. They're stable, she said quietly. The survivors are being treated. Captain Hale made it, but barely. Mercer nodded slightly but didn't turn. And the alien woman? He asked, his voice as calm as ever. Lyra, Vance said softly. She's alive but unconscious. Whatever she did down there nearly killed her. For a long time, Mercer said nothing. The stars reflected in his eyes. In the distance, the ruined planet slowly turned, its black surface glowing faintly. From the fires that still burned, Sir Vance added carefully, "We've confirmed something else." She handed him the holopad. Mercer's eyes flicked across the data. His jaw tightened. The readings were clear. The Kortha, ancient device they had used to destroy. The Harvesters wasn't a weapon at all, at least, not in the way humans understood weapons. It was something older, something far more dangerous. A fail-safe, Mercer murmured under his breath. It was designed to stop them, but only for a while. Vance swallowed hard. "We think it's temporary, sir. It's a signal we traced. There's more of them. Other fleets. Other swarms." This was only one piece. The words sank into the cold silence like a stone. Mercer's eyes darkened. The first war hadn't ended. It had only paused. He straightened. His voice sharpened. "Prepare the fleet for emergency repair. We need to be ready to move within 24 hours. Vance hesitated. "Sir, the men are exhausted. Half are. Ships are crippled." Mercer turned, his eyes locking onto hers like steel. "I know, but if we don't move, there won't be a home left to return to." The order was given. The humans got back to work. Across the shattered fleet, soldiers and engineers dragged themselves from the wreckage and began the grim task of rebuilding. The wounded were treated in crowded medbays. Bodies of the fallen were lined up silently, covered in dark cloth. No speeches, no words. Just the cold truth of war. In the command center, deep in the heart of the wrath. Lyra slowly opened her eyes. The medics rushed to her side, calling for officers. Moments later, Mercer himself entered, his expression unreadable. He sat beside her as the machines monitored her weak pulse. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's not over." Mercer gave a slow nod. "We know." Lyra swallowed. Her silver eyes locked onto his. "They don't stop."
Not you.
"You must understand. The Harvesters are not a race. They're not machines. They exist to reset the galaxy. When civilizations grow too large, too loud, the Harvesters awaken, and everything burns." Mercer's jaw tightened. She drew a shaky breath. "We called them here, all of us, every world, every city. We grew too fast. We forgot the old warnings, and now," her words trailed off into silence. But the meaning was clear. The soldiers of Earth had survived the first battle. But the real war was bigger than anything they had imagined. For the next 2 days, the fleet worked without rest. Repairs were rushed, weapons reloaded, damaged ships cannibalized to keep others flying. The survivors clung to life, driven by one thought: the enemy would return. And when they did, humanity would not be caught unprepared. Mercer remained on the bridge, always watching, always thinking. His hands folded behind his back, his mind cold and sharp. L.T. Vance approached late into the second night. Her face was drawn. "Sir, we've picked up something." He turned slowly. "What is it?" She hesitated. "Deep space signal. Very faint, but real. It's massive, bigger than anything we've ever seen. And it's moving toward us." Face hardened. "How long?" 2 days, maybe less." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mercer exhaled slowly. "Prep the Omega weapons." Vance froze. "Sir, those are banned. Even we swore never to." Mercer's eyes were like ice. "If we're going to die out here, we're not dying clean. Load the weapons. Tell the fleet. Prepare for last stand." The message spread fast. In every ship, soldiers looked at each other with grim faces. They all knew the rumors about the Omega weapons devices so destructive that even Earth itself had locked them away. Weapons that burned not just matter, but space itself. Now they would be used. The mood aboard the fleet changed. Jokes faded. Smiles vanished. Soldiers moved with quiet determination. Some recorded final messages to families back on Earth. Others polished their weapons one last time and threw it all. The blackness of space loomed ahead, cold and endless. The Harvester signal grew stronger. the shape of the approaching enemy. Fleet so vast it defied imagination, appeared as a dark blot on the stars. They were coming, and Earth would meet them with fire. The last stand begins. The blackness of space stretched wide and endless. But the darkness was no longer empty. It moved. It breathed. The harvester fleetif. It could even be called a fleet filled the void, with shapes too vast for the mind to hold. Dozens of titanic ships, each the size of cities, drifted silently toward the battered line of Earth's last defenders. The humans stood alone now. No other species had come. No one else dared. The signal for help had been heard by all, but only Earth had answered. And now Earth would fight alone, on board the ISS Wrath. Commander Dax Mercer stood at the center of the bridge, his face carved from stone. His sharp eyes never left the glowing tactical screens as the enemy slowly approached. His officers moved around him in tense, silent motions, their faces pale under the cold lights. The fleet was barely holding together, scarred ships, exhausted. Crews, half their weapons burned out, but still they stood. No one ran. No one begged. "Contact in 18 hours, Lieutenant Mara Vance reported softly. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the fear she couldn't hide. "All Omega weapons armed. All systems as ready as they'll ever be." Mercer gave the slightest nod. "Have we heard anything from Earth?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Vance shook her head. "Transmission lines are jammed. Too much interference. We're on our own." Mercer's hands tightened behind his back. He didn't look away from the screen. "Then we hold," he said simply. The decision was made. The soldiers of Earth, humanity's last war fleet, would not retreat as the hours passed. The fleet moved into final formation. The surviving warships drifted into a tight crescent. Every cannon, missile bay, and railgun aimed at the growing darkness ahead. The Omega weapons' massive devices locked beneath armored hulls were powered up for the first time in nearly a century. They pulsed with quiet menace, their cores glowing with unnatural energy. Even the bravest engineers whispered nervously as they armed the forbidden weapons. Everyone knew the stories. Everyone knew the risk. The Omega cores could burn through time itself if unleashed at full strength. The planet below them, already shattered, would be torn apart completely if the weapons were used. But no one cared. There were no other choices left. On board the bridge, a small light blinked. A signal. Weak. "Broken, sir," Vance whispered. "We have something. A message. Partial." Mercer's eyes flicked to the screen. The signal crackled. Voice barely audible whispered through static. It was Lyra. "They don't stop," the voice gasped. "They are endless. But the key is not their bodies. It's their mind." The signal died. Mercer's jaw tightened. His mind raced. What did it mean? Before he could speak, the sensors screamed. "They're here," Vance whispered. "Out in the void." The enemy moved. The first of the Harvester dreadnoughts drifted into range. The ships were impossible. Dark shapes like twisted bones, bristling with strange towers and glowing eyes. Some were so large they blocked out entire stars. They didn't fly, they slid through space like living shadows, silent and hungry. "Fire," Mercer ordered. The void exploded. The human fleet unleashed everything: plasma beams, railguns, nuclear missiles, an ocean of firepower that lit up the black. The first Harvester ship took the full impact of 1,000 weapons, and still, it kept coming. Its hull twisted unnaturally, wounds sealing themselves as fast as they were made. The humans kept firing. A second wave of missiles struck another enemy ship, tearing through its outer layers. Finally, one of the smaller Harvester vessels cracked and exploded, its burning wreck spinning into the dark. A cheer rose across the human fleet. They could be hurt, but the cheers died too soon. The enemy responded. From the depths of the dark, the Harvester ships released waves of black spheres, weapons that moved like living things, slipping through shields, bypassing armor. The first Earth frigate struck, vanished in a blink, folded into nothing. Another cruiser split in half as a white beam carved through its core. The humans fought with fury. They were drowning in the chaos. Mercer's voice remained cold and clear. "Prepare Omega strike." The fleet repositioned the largest battleships, locking targeting solutions on the heart of the enemy formation. The Omega weapons glowing now, like angry stars, came online. All ships clear firing zones. Vance called over the fleet-wide comms. Final warning, Omega launch imminent. The sky burned as the countdown began. Mercer's hands rested on the control panel. He didn't look away from the screen. His voice dropped to a whisper, barely audible. For Earth, he said. The weapons fired. The Omega blasts tore through space, screaming lines of impossible energy that shattered reality itself. The first Harvester dreadnought struck by the blast didn't just explode, it dissolved, crumbling into glowing dust as space twisted around it. Another enemy ship cracked, folded inward, and vanished from existence. The shockwave rolled out, tearing smaller enemy craft into fragments. For a brief moment, it seemed the tide might turn. The Harvester fleet reeled. But then, they adapted. The remaining enemy ships shifted, changed, their shapes twisted, becoming something else, something faster, harder, stranger. The next wave of Omega strikes hit empty space as the Harvesters warped through dimensions. Slipping through the cracks between worlds, Mercer's jaw clenched. His mind worked furiously. They're not just machines, he murmured. They're learning. The enemy surged forward. The human fleet broke apart. One by one, Earth's warships began to fall. The Nightingale, the Sabre, the Resolute, Teach, exploded in silence, their crews lost without time to scream. The Wrath itself shuddered as enemy beams struck its shields. On the surface of the dead planet, far below, the ancient corn, now cold, began to glow faintly. Unseen by the humans, something old and forgotten stirred deep beneath the ground. Lyra's voice faint. Broken whispered across the comms one last time. It's not their bodies. It's the mind. The mind. The words echoed. Mercer's eyes widened. In an instant, it clicked. The enemy wasn't just metal. It wasn't just ships. Somewhere, somehow, the Harvesters were one Minda, single intelligence spread across the fleet. We're fighting the wrong war, he whispered. But there was no time. The enemy closed in. The last stand had truly begun. The search for the mind, the sky was on fire. Earth's last fleet burned under the crushing weight of the Harvester swarm. Human warships exploded one by one, their hulls torn open by weapons beyond understanding. The ice's wrath, the heart of the fleet, shuddered under constant impact, its engines screaming, its shields flickering. Death moved through space like a black wave, cold and unstoppable. And yet through the smoke, through the fire, the humans still fought. Commander Dax Mercer stood on the cracked deck of the Wrath's bridge. His uniform torn, blood on his hands, his eyes burning with defiance. Every screen around him showed the same nightmare, enemy vessels, hundreds, maybe thousands, closing in from all sides. The Omega weapons had failed. The strongest weapons humanity had ever built barely slowed the enemy. The soldiers of Earth were out of time, out of hope. And yet something in Mercer's mind refused to break. They're not invincible, he whispered to himself, his voice cold and sharp. Eltimera Vance stumbled to his side, her face pale, her hands shaking. Sir, we're out of options. Half the fleet is gone. We can't hold this line. Mercer's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to the cracked, screenware. The alien woman, Lyra, still lay unconscious in the medbay. Her last words echoed in his mind. It's not the bodies. It's the mind. The enemy ships were too many, too fast. But Mercer understood something now. They weren't separate. They were connected. Every Harvester ship, every weapon, every drone, they moved with one will. One mind. Somewhere out there, hidden, buried, protected, was the true enemy. A central mind. Source. Get me a deep scan, he ordered sharply. All ships. I want gravitational readings, subspace ripples, anything unusual. If they have a mind, it has to be somewhere. Vance blinked, confused. Sir, we don't. Now, he snapped. The officers obeyed without question. Across the burning fleet, sensors reoriented. Scans swept the battlefield in every spectrum known to. Human science, and then, finally, something appeared. A blip. Faint. Almost invisible. Mercer's eyes locked onto the data. There, he breathed. 70,000 kilometers from our position. Deep space anomaly. No visual. But something is there. Vance's voice dropped. Look at that. B. The mind. Mercer didn't hesitate. It is. The decision came fast. All surviving ships, he called into the fleet-wide channel. We're changing targets. Defensive formations only. Focus fire on these coordinates. We hit the brain. Cut the head off the snake. The comes filled with voices. Some shocked, some angry, some desperate. But the fleet obeyed. The ships, that remained the broken pieces of Earth's last stand, turned. Engines flared, weapons realigned, and together, battered and bloodied. Humanity surged forward toward the invisible target. The harvester ships reacted immediately. They swarmed, faster than before. Entire waves of drones hurled themselves at the human ships, sacrificing themselves without hesitation. The humans died in droves. Frigates vanished into fire. Carrier exploded in a silent shockwave. But the survivors pushed on, teeth clenched. Weapons burning. Mercer's hands gripped the edge of the command table as the Wrath took hit after hit. Closer, or growled through his teeth. Hold the line. Get us closer. The distance shrank. 60,000 kilometers, 50-40, and then nat 30,000. Kilometers. Something vast shifted in the dark. The hidden object revealed itself. The crew gasped, even Mercer's breath. Caught for a moment, it wasn't a ship, it wasn't a structure. It was something else, something alive. A colossal mass of dark matter and artificial design, shaped like a twisted starfish, pulsing with eerie red lights. It stretched for miles, half in normal space. Half flickering through dimensions the human mind could barely process. The true mind of the harvesters. Vance whispered, "My God." Mercer's voice stayed cold. "Target all Omega weapons. Remaining ships. This is the priority. Take it down." The fleet obeyed. Missiles streaked toward the thing. Plasma beams sliced the void. The Omega cannons, though drained and broken, fired once more. The first hit struck the strange surface of the creature ship. The impact sent waves of distortion through space. The harvester swarm faltered. The creature began to awaken. From its surface, tendrils of black energy unfolded, vast arms of pure destruction reaching toward the human ships. The mind had no face, no voice, but its rage filled the air like thunder. The harvesters, once cold and machine-like, now moved with frantic speed, desperate to defend their core. Humanity pressed the attack. The Wrath led the charge, its remaining weapons blazing. Smaller ships flanked from both sides, even as they burned. Soldiers screamed, systems failed, engines died, but still they moved forward. On the medbay screen, Lyra's eyes flickered open, her voice weak. Barely a breath whispered across. "The coms burn the core. Only fire, pure fire, can unmake it." Mercer heard her. "Prepare the Phoenix Protocol," he ordered. The officers froze. The Phoenix Protocol was worse than the Omega weapons. A last resort buried deep in Earth's war code. Self-destruct system designed not just to destroy a ship, but to unleash a chain reaction inferno that would collapse local space. It would kill the Wrath. It would kill the mind. It would kill everything within 100,000 kilometers. Mercer's voice was quiet. "This is the only way." Vance's eyes filled with horror. "So there are still survivors, I know," Mercer said, his voice steady. "Evacuate who you can, but this ends now." The order went through. Shuttles launched from the surviving ships, teeny specks fleeing into deep space. The Wrath, burning and broken, turned toward the Harvester core one final time. Its engines burned hot. Its weapons kept firing. The enemy surged. The mind screamed, and Dax Mercer, standing tall on the bridge, whispered his final words, "For Earth." The Phoenix Protocol activated. A blinding flash consumed the ship. The Wrath vanished into fire. The core of the Harvester mind twisted, shuddered, and then collapsed. The shockwave raced through the dark, tearing the swarm apart, burning through space itself. And then silence. The battle was over. But the cost was everything. The ashes of victory, the void was quiet. No flames, no movement. Just endless black stretching in every direction. The battlefield where Earth's last fleet had stood was now filled with silent wreckage, broken ships, shattered debris, fragments of steel drifting cold and lifeless through space. The harvester swarm was gone. The nightmare had ended. But at what cost? Far from the blast that had consumed the ISS Wrath, a handful of human ships, crippled, bruised, barely functioning, drifted. In the silence, the survivors, those lucky enough to escape the Phoenix blast, floated alone under the dark sky. The war was over. But they were not cheering. They were not celebrating. They were silent. In one of those ships, the medical frigate Endeavour, Lieutenant Mara Vance sat alone by a flickering screen, her hands resting on her knees. Her face was blank, her eyes red from exhaustion. She didn't speak. She barely moved. Like everyone else, she was still trying to understand what had happened. Commander Dax Mercer was gone. The Wrath was gone. Earth's greatest last line of defense had been sacrificed to kill the mind of the harvesters. The Phoenix Protocol had worked. The enemy had died. But so had their leader. Vance exhaled slowly, her breath shaking. She closed her eyes. Across the remaining ships, the same quiet filled every corridor. Soldiers sat in silence. Medics moved. Between the wounded without speaking, the galaxy's greatest threat had been stopped. But the faces of the fallen filled every mind. No one on those ships would ever forget the sight of the Wrath's final charge. The flash of light that ended the battle in the medbay of the Endeavour. The alien woman Lear lay on a recovery bed, her body weak but her eyes open. She watched. The ceiling in silence. She could feel it, the quiet in her bones. The enemy was truly gone. For the first time in countless years, the harvesters were silent. And yet, something inside her stirred uneasily. The door hissed open, and one of the surviving captains, Jonas Hale, bruised and bandaged, stepped inside. He sat beside her without speaking for a long time. Finally, he asked, "Did we win?" Lyra's eyes flicked toward him. She gave a faint, sad smile. "You survived," she said softly. "That is something that is more than most." He nodded. Slowly, but the sadness in his eyes didn't fade. Back on the shattered bridge of the remaining ships, the engineers worked to re-establish contact with Earth. It took hours. The subspace damage from the Phoenix blast had severed long-range communication. But finally, slowly a connection formed. A signal. A voice from home. The image of Earth appeared on the screen: blue oceans, white clouds, the green of forests. Untouched by war, it was still there, still waiting. "Survivor Fleet," the voice said softly. "This is Earth Command. We read you status." Captain Hale answered in a hollow voice. "The threat has been neutralized. The Harvester Core is destroyed. Our losses are total. Commander Mercer is gone." A long silence followed. Then Earth Command's voice came back, heavy with grief. "Understood." The next several hours, the remaining fleet drifted in slow recovery. Rescue shuttles moved through the debris fields, gathering what survivors they could. Bodies were recovered where possible. Wreckage was cataloged. Every soldier, every crew member knew the truth. The galaxy had been saved by a single act of ultimate sacrifice. In the heart of the medbay, Lyra sat up weakly. Her hands trembled, but her voice, though soft, was steady. "There will be more." She whispered to Captain Hale. He frowned, confused. "More? Thought we killed them." Lyra's silver eyes met his. "You killed the mind that was here, but the harvesters are older than time. They sleep across the galaxy in places no maps can reach. It may take centuries or longer, but they always return." Alay swallowed hard. "Then what was this for?" he asked bitterly. "What did we die for?" Lyra's eyes softened. She reached out, resting a frail hand on his. "For time," she said gently. "You bought your people time." The harvesters won't rise again for generations, maybe for longer. That's what every battle is, in the end time for those who come next. Her words sank deep into the quiet. Elsewhere, across the fleet, soldiers gathered in small groups. Some whispered prayers. Some simply sat, staring into the stars. The names of the fallen were read over combs. The names of every ship, every captain. Every soldier lost in the battle, and always at the top of the list was Dax Mercer, the man who had refused to surrender. The man who had faced the impossible and still charged forward in the silence. Memories of him lingered in every mind. Hours later, the order came. Return to Earth, the surviving ships, patched as best as they could be, turned toward the distant blue glow of home. Engines flared weakly as they began the long journey back through the stars. Lyra stood at the observation window, her pale face lit by the distant sun.
Captain Hale
Joined her in the silence. They'll tell stories about this, he said softly. About what happened here. She nodded. She glanced at her. And you? Will you stay with us? She smiled faintly. For a time, until your people no longer need me. The two stood together in the silence, watching the broken stars as the fleet drifted home. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of human sensors, deep in the endless dark, something ancient stirred a whisper of thought, a memory of hunger. Not now, not soon. But one day, the harvesters would return. But when they did, so would humanity's fire. The war was over. For now, the end.